Okay. So I'd like to call this order of the Coventry Charter Group Review Commission to order, and would Michael take the attendance, please?
I will. Sorry, just gonna move my screens around. Robert Brennan.
Here.
Scott Copley.
Absent.
Absent. Scott Guthrie.
Here.
Jim Humphrey.
Here.
Brad Meyer.
Here.
Ben Para.
Yeah.
Sarah Repose.
Here.
Michael Stevens, I'm here, and Ted Tracy.
Here. Thank you. We have a quorum. Ben, would you please explain the emergency evacuation?
For emergency, please exit this door and out the side door on the right.
Fantastic. Thank you. Did everyone get a copy of the minutes from March 2nd?
I did.
By email or by any other source? Okay. Are there any corrections? If not, is there a motion to approve those minutes?
Also move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion's made and seconded for the approval of the minutes on March 2nd. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed?
Can you put me down as an abstention, please, Mike?
Sure.
Just because I wasn't here.
Okay,
That's all.
all right.
And if we didn't do the February 23rd minutes yet, I put them on the agenda for next week.
Yeah. I got an email from Joanne also. You didn't get those sent to you as an email?
I did, but because I wasn't present for the
Gotcha.
meeting, that's why
Okay.
I'm abstaining. But
Um,
they were great.
Well,
Nothing
I
wrong with
wish you
them.
would have said, I wish you would have said, Scott, can you hold it off till next week so I can
No,
read
no.
them? But
No, well, I can read them. No, I read them.
Yeah.
And that's how I knew what you guys did last week. But
Okay.
because I wasn't present for the meeting, technically, I'm not supposed to vote on the minutes.
okay.
Robert's rules. Sorry.
Gotcha.
I'm a stickler.
Okay, let's go to old business. We were talking about elections terms, party affiliation, ballots, discussion, action, and I did some more research for you. And we talked about how you can put a question on the ballot, whether the language goes on the top and the explanation underneath. I happened to find this from the Board of Elections. And I'll read it to you. It says, each local question shall be submitted to the Department of State by the Board of Canvassers of each of the cities and towns. The descriptive heading, which I think is probably what should be on the top instead of on the bottom. It says, the descriptive heading shall be a brief caption of the question, including the purpose in question and the dollar amount. The authorization shall be a line containing the site, which I'm kind of like weird on this. It says CITE to the authority for the question to the ballot. Text of the question, it says the text of the question shall be the exact language of the referenda or question that shall appear on the ballot. So we had talked in the past about whether the language of the charter change has to go on the top or the bottom. And it looks like this tells us that we have the option of putting a question, asking the voters in plain language what they would like to do, and then putting the actual language underneath. I put this on the agenda simply just to explain that to everyone. I don't know if anybody has any input.
So if, let's say we decide we want to put the question out to change town council terms back to 2 years, we can
Yeah.
have the heading be, shall the term of a town councilor be 2 years? And then below it has the formal
Yes.
language to it.
So if you'd like to read it, it's just it's the header page on there. So instead of, we also talked about people not really voting on charter questions or changes because all the language is at the top
Right.
instead, and then reading a little sentence on the bottom. I just wanted to know if we could reverse that. And it seems to me, maybe once we get a legal opinion, because this is just something I picked up from the Secretary of State's website. So I just want to make sure that everything we do it right.
I can actually reach out to Rob Rock, who's the Director of Elections at Secretary of State's office, and ask him about it, because I
Okay.
think he's who we'd be submitting, or the council would be submitting the questions to anyway, so
Okay.
I can ask him that.
Yeah, why don't you take this and you can, and it's got the actual
Yeah.
the file number to it. So instead of asking somebody, when they turn over the ballot to look at a charter question, it's not gonna be
All the
8 miles of
legalese,
language.
right.
It's gonna be, do you want to do this? Underneath that, it's gonna be, these are the words that are gonna allow this to happen.
Right, the actual like strike, is it the
Yeah.
actual strike through
I don't
and
think,
like
no, I
underline?
think
or-
that I think that in the last charter review, they passed.
You could put a
um,
summary
A
or
summary,
not
right,
the
a
act. You
summary,
didn't have to
not
put
the
actual.
actual,
Right.
like legislative format.
right.
So all I
'Cause
want
that's
to do
just
is,
gonna confuse
I want to make
people.
it easier for people to
Mhm.
vote on something instead of harder.
Right.
So if they turn over the ballot and it says, hey, would you like us to give you $1,000? They're gonna say yes,
Yes.
I
Right.
just thought that was important to add to the discussion on ballot placement and question placement and so forth.
I might also be able to get some examples of
That would be
other
fantastic.
towns' charter questions from him.
That would be fantastic.
Okay,
And we have it written, it shall not be necessary for the full text of a charter or of amendment to a charter to be printed upon the ballot, any digest or description thereof, or any question or statement which substantially expresses the purpose or identifies the subject matter to be voted on shall be sufficient.
That's our.
That's
charter.
our charter that's in there right now, so
So the other part that we talked about in our charter
as
was
long as it doesn't go
was
against.
who's excluded from being on our charter commission, which is, I think, a little bit
Right before
closer
that,
to the
yeah.
top. We talked about that because it kind of like says who can't be on the commission instead of who could be on the commission. Can you, why don't you
Sure.
read that up for us?
No member of said committee shall be an elected or appointed official or an employee of the town or of any department, office, or agency of the town.
they'd have a conflict of interest,
Yeah.
yeah.
So we talked about anybody that's an elected official.
Yeah.
Ben brought up that if you serve on the fire district, you can't serve on a charter review.
Oh,
Um,
are they elected, the fire district?
Yeah,
Yes.
they are.
Are,
All
oh,
right, so I was
And the
a,
school committee.
I
right,
used to be, I
yeah,
used to be a legislator, and that would preclude me
from being part of
from
it.
being part of, the discussion or
Because you're an
anything.
elected official and you represent part of the town.
So
I didn't think about the
I hate to
fire
use the
district.
worst words, it's like dumbing things down to get someone to serve on a commission that knows nothing and is told exactly what to do. Everybody has to have an interest in the town and be free with what they want to say, but to take it away from anybody else is kind of like wrong. It's almost like a First Amendment thing to me in the back of my mind. So we had talked about that. We might be voting on that one first and sending that
To the council.
as an update. Okay, because I think that's important. We should start right where we begin, and that is,
So who would you like to see included?
it's not who I want to see included, it's who do you exclude?
Who
do you-
So you just say, so you say we go
So-
to, we're a little bit too strict right now as it is right
Yes.
now.
So a simple change would be to say town elected positions. Rather than.
Because that's
all.
kind of like.
Any
a-
elected
Right.
position.
Right, oh,
So
yeah.
as Scott was saying,
It's
like
not
if he was a
specific.
state rep or state senator.
I
it
can see if
wouldn't
you
preclude-
represented this town, then that's one thing, but if you were a state rep that
Right.
didn't represent this town. But I don't. yeah,
So
I don't
when
know
you
how
think
could
about
be
it,
without-
if a state senator, state representative
Right.
wanted to be on the commission because they can bring some valuable information back to the town, why wouldn't you have them on it?
I mean, I think it's important to get their input, but I think that you would find that there would be a conflict of interest if they are an elected member that is governed by the charter. I
But
would
the
definitely
state-
ask
but
a
a-
lawyer. I would
But a
ask a
state
lawyer
elected
about it.
official isn't governed by local charter.
Right, I mean, the
Yeah.
only nexus of potential
state,
conflict
yeah.
is that any state rep or senator, whether they live in Coventry or not, is gonna
Right.
have a piece of Coventry that they represent.
Right,
But because they are not governed by the charter, they'd be free to give any opinions on the charter.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So really, it's local elected people that would be the most concerning,
Okay.
Town.
or town
Specific,
employees.
town elected of people specifically. I think, from where I sit, I wouldn't preclude employees necessarily. We have a lot of passionate employees who work for the town that also care about the town and want to be involved. And because they don't hold any legislative power or managerial power, I don't think there's a conflict there. I mean, there could be a complete conflict if they are pushing some kind of a thing, but I think that will become apparent that, oh, you want more benefits or something, that
Right.
this would get you there. And they would just, but that's why you have 9 people on the committee, so
Right,
that
to balance that.
there's balance. of-
No, that would be on the
Interest.
council as to who they wanted to appoint.
True.
That could be the key. I think you may have said it, not governed by the charter. 'Cause when you go through the charter, they talk about town councils, school committees, et cetera,
Your
et cetera.
finance director.
You're not governed by the charter,
Right.
something like that. We talked about trying to keep things simple.
I mean,
Maybe we
certain-
could find a sentence that could handle it.
Planning commission, zoning board of hearing board, those positions have exercise power and authority to a degree that it would be in conflict with trying to change the charter
Yep.
that would affect their office.
Right.
But if you live in town and you work,
In
you're
the
the
tax
secretary,
collector's office or something.
or you're one of the
You're a
administrative
clerk,
assistants
you're
at the
mowing
school
the lawn.
department, something.
Yeah, 1520. I
15.
want to
You're
go
a
back.
teacher.
Well, my wife at one point was on the original land trust. We got a job, part-time job at the library and had to leave the land trust.
Hmm.
Which,
For a
I mean,
part-time job, it
For a part-time
seems like,
job.
In today's age where it's so hard to find people to volunteer their time. Yeah.
Maybe, maybe it's like you were talking about employees of the town, maybe it's purely administrative. Teachers, have to be careful. We just talked about a collective bargaining agreement that's in the charter. So that could be, teachers could be true. But teachers have always been some of the best people I have on the school committee too.
My gut feeling is maybe like, I say department chair, but something that's like the top of a
Like an
department,
administrative position.
like, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah, 'cause
So-
there are certain jobs that are very specific in the charter that the charter talks about.
So part of your package that you have, it's going to have the original language.
Yep.
From 1972. I think there were 2 changes maybe. Not too far back or more recently.
Um,
If you take a look at that language
an
and you look at the
amendment.
added language, make a decision based on that. And, did one commission go too far to eliminate a certain group of people, or
Right.
were they doing it to keep people involved? So,
I have an
Right.
amendment, 11-276.
I have that at the beginning of this section, 11-276, so.
Okay. Just a little.
Yeah.
yeah, it was 1520 amendment of the charter. It was that first paragraph. So, does anybody have any input on that? How they feel about it?
I have a new draft personnel policy manual that is going to be going to the council soon, but in that I address conflicts of interest and nepotism. And while having family members or close relations in your workplace is not a case of nepotism and violation, it's only if you have a supervisory relationship. So I was thinking about any of these boards or commissions like the land trust, it's probably fine to have a part-time librarian serve on the land trust, but probably not appropriate to have the associate planner or a member of the finance department that would have opinions about how the funds are used. And so where there's a conflict, you wouldn't want to have it, but where there isn't a conflict, it's not a problem.
We're
So,
talking about people that serve on charter commissions, not anything else.
sure.
But under charter commissions.
So as long as, where I'm getting at, if there's language to say where there is no conflict, you're more inclusive.
Okay,
And it's
And-
subject to a case
And
by
it's
case
subject to a
basis.
case by case basis of interpretation. Is there a conflict here?
okay. So my advice to all of you would be to read the 72 charter, read what we have now. It's gonna have the changes, when it was changed, who changed it, and see if they did it for one reason or another.
Right. there might be
Whether it
something.
can be a little more aligned with making it easier for people to be involved in government instead of harder for people to be involved in government. Any other comments? Suggestions?
I'm just thinking the discussion we're having, there's some happy medium between a blanket, anybody and too restrictive. I think that's what we're gonna come up with. We need to give some thought, come back next week
Okay,
with our opinions, maybe.
you'll have fun reading this stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, you got my wheels turning. The wheels are turning. I'm
Yeah.
trying to think of different scenarios and I think of, a charter where, you're giving permissions for spending or something along those lines where, I don't know. Anyway, I gotta think about it.
Okay.
But-
All right, so if we are done speaking about 1520, let's go to new business, which is actually it's old business, to be honest with you. We were talking about the budget last week and how we can make it easier to present a budget to the people, how we can get them involved and gain their trust back. Ted kind of was big on a different way that it's done where it's an either or. Like I said, I don't know if you.
Yeah, I actually read the letter
Watched
that I sent
anything?
out today.
So why don't you just kind of like recap?
In short-
We have an audience behind me here that I'm sure is interested.
My- I shared as a starting point how South Kingstown does it, which is in short, the town council prepares the budget. They can be petitioned for things to include or not include. They make their final decision, and then from that point, citizens of the town can petition for a change, either increase or decrease within the state limits. If it meets, they get enough petitioners to sign off, they have a referendum, and the referendum is either approve the change or council as is, and that's the end of it. So at most, they have one referendum. South Kingston, to my research, only had one, which was in 2020, that they had one that someone had petitioned to cut from the school department and cut, there was also a separate one to cut from the town side. But I believe that's the only one that they've had. But it's something, so we let the town council make the decisions that they believe is in the best interest of the town, but it leaves in a, I guess, a safety valve if the citizens believe that a change is necessary. And it doesn't mandate that there is a referendum, but it just has a procedure in which there could be one, if that's the, petitioners raise that as a possibility, but it's not something where there has to be one every year as we have right now. It doesn't have to have the financial town meeting as we used to have. It defaults pretty much the entire process to the town council, and South Kingstown has a whole timeline of what's going to happen when. That part, is flexible, but I like the ending part is the town council makes a decision, and then the citizens basically have one very short window.
It's like an A or B,
Yeah, if
So
they go,
there's
if
no
it goes to a
fail, right?
referendum, it's change, no change, basically.
which I like, not having to do
Instead of
something.
perpetual
Right.
budget
Do you want this?
referendums.
No. Do you want this? No. Do you
Yeah.
want this? No.
The nose, I know,
Yeah,
with no
there's
solution.
also an interesting phrase in here that says if the council of the school committee shall determine the expenditure or added appropriation to the general fund or school fund for a suggested purpose would not be fiscally responsible, it shall adopt a resolution to that effect and not be required to expend the funds for said purposes. So someone comes in, gets 200 signatures, and they want to raise something by whatever the limit is.
Add
on
$500,000 to the school appropriation.
Right, and that puts you over the 4% cap. The town
Yeah.
council can say, no, we can't do that.
Right.
Basically,
But didn't that one have like a
That
$250,000?
You had to have a change of at least 250,000.
but if you already had a levy set at 4%,
You can't petition to
You
add
can't.
more.
you can't add more by this town council can say that's not fiscally,
But they can cut,
that they can,
but they can cut.
But on the same side, you can't cut below your prior. If it like on the school side, you can't cut.
you would have to, according to this, you'd have to have the referendum to do that, I believe.
Yeah. Jim, you had something that you wanted to?
Yeah, I talked to both town clerks in North Kingstown and South Kingstown today. A woman from South Kingstown was going to talk to me for a couple hours about it. Because I think again, they had one in 2020 and had one in 2009. So and it's funny, if you remember, the South Kingstown they had two public hearings where you could do line item level suggested petitions.
Yep.
With just 20 signatures, which she said, I thought, oh, that could be crazy. She said that was very helpful. It was really targeted. They want to do a GIS survey. They suggested some things that the town council took under advisement, take it or leave it. It was, they can make the decisions on that.
Mhm.
She said that was helpful, though. The overarching theme I got from her was it's a lot of work and a very tight timeline to do everything they needed to do. Again, she was referencing 2020. But overall, they haven't had a lot of petitions, to your
Right.
point. North Kingstown, maybe saw the email, called them, and they haven't had a,
One in like 2013.
well, guess what their threshold is? Their signature number is 3% of the electorate. Same in Westerly, 3% of the electorate. We have only 200 signatures in
Yep.
South Kingstown, which is interesting that they had more recently have had one.
Yeah.
That's right. South Kingstown we talked about what that number should be a lot. She was concerned that 200 might be too small.
My personal opinion is I thought it was too low. I like the idea of it. I like that idea of putting it as a percentage
You mean
of
the
the
number?
vote.
You mean the
Like how many
number?
how many
many
signatures
signatures?
would you need to
You mean the
trigger?
number as
Yeah.
opposed to percentage of vote?
Well, it would,
Elected.
So 3% of the electorate in Coventry would be 750,
No.
which is a really
What's
high.
2%?
yes.
high vote. It'd be 500.
But I like the idea of setting it that way. It,
So 1% is 250.
depending on how towns go over, if this were to pass and were on the books, 3% could look different in 10 years. Or
Right.
2%, whatever. I like the idea of having a percentage because then
Yeah.
it's always adjusted to,
You're future-proof that way.
Right.
Yeah, because when you use a hard number, that's not necessarily great.
I'll give the devil's advocacy for whether you're a town of 30,000 or 1.3 million, it's the same 10 people that get the work done. Right. And so when you get that economies of scale, if you were the city of San Diego and you needed 3%, well, that's 30,000 signatures. It's not functionally realistic or helpful. And so not that I expect Coventry to grow to 300,000 anytime soon, but I think having a low enough bar to functionally get the message out in front of the public is also.
Without making it an impossibility.
Right. So I think 750 is an impossibility.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous. I think 200, if you want to say 1% gets it up to
That's
250.
palatable.
Maybe
That's feasible.
Maybe
And
that's
then
it.
even if you do, well, San Diego would be looking at 10,000 signatures, but they have companies that pay people to collect them. So maybe that's not a problem.
Well, the same town clerk in South Kingston in the same breath said, yeah, we have to verify all these signatures if we
Right.
did that. It's a
Yeah.
ton of work. And they
That's-
have like a 8-day window to get all this done.
Window's really tight.
It's
Right,
really
so-
tight. I
so
think that was the
if
biggest
it
concern.
takes 8 days to get the signatures, and then how many days do you have to verify?
Not a lot of
right,
time.
and the more you need, the more time. it
And we
takes.
talked about that a lot. Yeah, exactly right.
Now, do they include any sort of like public hearing working up to their budget?
Yes,
Yes.
They do.
Yeah.
Okay.
they have,
2 days, they have 2 days in a
Two
row, I
public
think.
hearings,
Two public
yeah.
hearings. There was a pain point for her too, because there was a lot to set up for that. But when we kind of have a referendum public hearing already set up in our process.
right.
Right.
You know,
And we have
early-
budget
And
workshops
that's
and
early
all
in the
those.
process.
Yeah.
It's like
And the same 10
December-
people show up
December to
for them.
January.
Last year, it
Um,
was the first, was that the first
No,
time
I'm
we
sorry.
did 2
I think
public
it's later.
hearings with
It's
one on
later.
a Saturday? So we did a Saturday public hearing in addition to the regular Monday public hearing Tuesday.
What
So
was the attendance?
December,
It was,
that's.
5
the
people, 4
internal.
people.
yeah.
That's building
that's
the
too
budget,
bad.
not the.
People
But I
don't
mean,
care until it's time to make a decision.
the issue is, are
Yeah.
you making it available regardless who attends, so that when you get criticized, well, we were there Saturday too. You weren't working, so.
Yeah, that was her concern about the public hearings. He goes, in these days, information is readily available digitally online, anywhere they want to get it. We have these big meetings and nobody shows up. Unless
And-
there's a hot topic, then people tend to show up.
And the argument against 2 public hearings, and out of concern for my own sanity and that of staff coming
Right.
in on a Saturday when they put in all this time, and the people coming in on Saturday are not getting overtime like other members of the staff would. It's recorded. So
Right, right.
no one misses anything except for the chance to maybe speak at the public hearing if they can't make it. But even after the public hearing, they can send emails, letters.
That's where the South Kingstown, they have a petitioning process after digesting the budget, the budget, public hearings. They can then, here's something I want to write up. You don't have to be there. You have a window
They
to
have
do
a
it.
presentation, and then you could
I like
again have a
that.
smaller petition that says, we believe that this should be included, this should not be
20
included.
signatures.
Again, much smaller number of signatures they need, but it's before, it's between presentation, basically like presentation is, here's what we're planning on right now. Then you have this opportunity to say, well, we got a petition that wants to go this way, and they can consider it. It's not binding, but
Right.
it's between presentation and adoption.
Yeah, in her experience, I thought, oh, you might get 1,000 of those. No, she said it's been very targeted, very few, very helpful. And that their town council actually embraced quite a few of them, in fact. So that was kind of helpful. Good to hear that. Yeah, I think this
I think
petitioning
our
idea is
goal
a good
should
one.
be- Our goal should be to win back the trust of the taxpayers and present something that they can accept. We've been in the no deal for a long time now. And
I have a
people can
perfect
keep
track record.
saying, pardon me, people can keep saying no, but how long before everything falls apart?
Right.
Because, the community has to run. Services have to be provided. And I think that what we put together to ask them should have that in mind. It should be like engaging. We want your input. Some people are great writers. I'm not, but this is what we want, is we want you to be part of the budget process. But you're always going to have that group of people or that small percentage that's just going to continue to go, no. And that's what we need to focus on.
Yes,
Get more input on this.
So I think we have something here. I mean, there's some, we're getting a lot of feedback on what doesn't work, but again, I think to Ben's point, timeline and effort for process, we got to take that into consideration. I think you may have mentioned last meeting that maybe a lot of what we have already set up is fine. We just get.
I think our budget process
Yeah,
works. We have so many meetings, if we don't have weekend or not, we can decide that. I like our process. I think we have an open process, whether people take advantage of it when it happens, watch it the next day or whatnot. I'm okay with that. I wasn't saying just scrap everything and
Yeah.
copy South Kingstown. I just like the ratification. That seems to be where I think our current issue is.
Either or instead of no.
Yes, I like
Yeah,
that too.
yes.
You take away the
Right.
no option.
I think even the
Yeah.
Say
petitioning
yes to this or yes to that.
Or
in
petition
the
again.
public hearings is actually more inclusive.
But
You don't have to be a public
25
speaker.
years ago, it wasn't a big
Yeah.
deal to get a budget passed. Now, you
It's
take
nearly-
4 shots at it in 1
Right.
year.
And
And the expense,
And the expense, yeah.
because as we got back to the special elections, I mean, the budget process is the same thing. You're hiring poll workers, you're paying the overtime for everyone to be here. It's a lot extra behind the scenes that goes into holding those referendums.
And if there is, let's just say we said this is a great idea and it's 1%. And something does go to a referendum, we're still going to be, again, the advocate, we're still going to be in the mode to get people out to vote for it.
Mhm.
We don't want it to still be 9% or whatever.
right.
That's still going to be an issue. And I know it's interesting. They have it timed, so it's like June 9th. If there's a
Yeah, their
referendum.
charter was very specific
Yeah,
on like dates and whatnot. Of course, ironically, it was 2020 they had it and they had to move it because of COVID and everything.
Right.
But I'm reading their charter and they have like really strict, I think,
There's
doesn't
no
our
problem.
financial town meeting have like, it's supposed to
They
be,
have a hard date.
yeah.
Yeah.
We
Those-
don't follow it because it doesn't fit.
because I was looking at our process. I know town manager creates an operating budget and a date fixed by the town council. So I guess a date is created at some point in time, and then that triggers everything else, I guess.
Yeah, we built a whole budget calendar back in October,
Okay,
and it's it's as good of a schedule as any.
okay.
We're trying to hit these milestones, and in some cases we fall behind. We've had a lot of absent staff that has crippled our productivity in certain departments. So some things just, when reality hits, it's not matching up with the timeline, but it is good to have it because that sets the expectation and puts us on a schedule and deadlines. And even though we're short-staffed, we're still hitting the targets. And so this year, I'll be presenting the town manager's recommended budget by April 4. And then we'll have a couple of public hearing presentations later in the month. And then we have the financial town meeting and referendum at the end of May.
Mr. Guthrie, I do have a copy of the budget schedule. If you want to just pass it out so people would take a quick look so you can see
Yeah,
what
sure.
it actually looks like.
So our goal would be to have a great writer that on the top of this question that goes to the voters gains their confidence and then put our language underneath it. Because I just fear that any change is going to be voted against on anything. So we need to get, the feeling of the folks back in, make it comfortable for them to go and vote for something. Because I'm pretty sure it's probably going to be advertised before
Yeah.
it goes on the ballot. And when you ask something, ask them a question on what they want, and then you say, this is the way it's going to work. It's a lot easier than saying, here's a question, vote yes or no. So I'm not sure about, like I said, the biggest problem that we have is there's no media anymore. There's no newspapers anymore. So to try to get information to people, it just gets more and more difficult every day. And it should be easier for people to read, easier for people to vote.
And I think you're right
Good
to
solid website.
vote either yes for this one or yes for that one, not yes or no
Right.
on one question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just procedurally, how much time do we need to spend on the language of the questions? Because I think, if I'm not mistaken, that we send our recommendations to the council and they actually decide what the language of the question. I mean, we can recommend how we think, but I think it's unfortunately, no offense on you there.
Well, we decided to send updates to the council.
Yeah, oh yeah, yeah,
So what we can do is, here's our suggested language.
okay,
Here's our suggested explanation.
right.
And hopefully
And then
that
they can decide what they want to
they
do.
can
with that.
decide what they
Okay.
want
I
to do.
think the more explicit, the more detailed, the more thorough you are, you're not making them do the legwork to figure it out on the
Yeah.
back
Right,
end if it's
got it.
vague and unclear. So,
Well, the reasons are going to be, the pros and cons of why we want it
Right.
that way. are
so
gonna
if
be
you
listed
develop
out.
your arguments, then they'll be able to read them, understand them, and they'll still get to make the choice as
Yeah.
to what moves forward and what doesn't. But
Got it.
And they can always say, we like this idea, but we would word it maybe differently, and if they decide that, that's.
There's
within their-
also a legal review too.
I was just gonna say,
That's-
usually legal is the
There
one
was-
who
there was a
develops
legal
those
review.
questions.
Yeah.
When I was on the council, actually, we had, excuse me, the Charter Review Commission, we had so many recommendations that actually we bundled them. So we put them in bundles of like 4 recommendations so that people were voting for a bundle. We took a risk to do it that way, but we try to take a calculated risk that we thought certain things seemed to be more logically put together. So we did it that way because we just didn't think people would go through like 25 or 20
Absolutely, I
recommendations. So
agree.
they were back to about 4 bundles.
Right, especially when you're just trying to change language to like make it in line with state law. It's not like you're asking a big item like, do you want 2 or 4 year terms? I mean, it's when you're just making little changes.
Now, last time, Ted, you brought up like a hypothetical, what if like the same 20 people put in like 10 different petitions with different amounts subtracted or added? Would it be too restrictive if we say you can only sign one petition?
I think on the petition side, you could sign multiple ones, but when you go, if
Yeah, you
You
can
have-
only vote for one.
you can only
on
vote
the-
for one, so
Right,
if you had I'll do it in percentages. If the town council approved a budget that had a 2% increase, and you got a petition that has adjusting that percentage from 0 to 4, you have a 0, you have 1, a
Yeah.
3, and a 4. You can sign all the petitions. Why you would sign the petitions that contradict each other, I don't know, but if it goes to a ballot, you have council approved budget, increase to 3, increase to 4, decrease to 1, decrease to 0, you're only voting on one. And whatever you know,
I
prevails.
don't know if like.
I don't know if you
maybe
want,
two-
I
I
think,
don't know.
I think if
That was just
you
something I
add
was
that,
thinking
you're adding more work to the town if they have to now find out, are you a valid petitioner? And then, did you already sign one of these? That's where I think could be a problem. Again, I don't know
So
why
what
you
you're
would
saying is
sign,
could they sign more than one?
yeah,
Yes.
on the,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
And that South Kingstown lets them sign multiple petitions.
I don't even know how you would track that.
That's the thing, it's like you'd have to literally be like.
If I
line
could
them.
get in an Excel file, I could just merge them and see where the
Well,
duplicates
that's-
are.
There you go, that's a way to do it.
But I think that kind of raises something we could look into, how we create the petition so it could actually be verified in a timely manner. You know, I don't know if there's what we require on the petition, whether it's just
So
name,
it's
name,
like voter,
address,
Okay,
when you're running
so-
for office.
Like nomination papers.
name, address, license
Could
number. I
you
don't know.
do E-signature electronic petitioning. And not that I want to encourage Facebook to take over the world, but we do live in a day and age where people are comfortable with electronics. If there was a way to collect the
Some
information.
people are comfortable with electronics.
Not everyone, that's true.
Okay,
But I mean, I'm not saying eliminate the paper petition and signatures, but
right.
if it was easier to sign because you could go to whatever Friends of Coventry website and pick your petitions and sign 3.
DocuSign, something like that.
Something
How do you
like that.
verify
Verify.
yourself
How do you verify?
that way?
And more cost effective to verify too. If we
It'd be
could-
too much work on the
Well-
petitioner's part to
I know,
create an electronic list.
The state manages to verify me for my driver's registration renewal and things like that. You put in key voter ID stuff, driver's license or address or whatever. And
If you have to do any online filing for the state for a business, you have a PIN and a CID. And that's what we do to verify. There's definitely ways out there.
So we'd have to pay for a service in order to do that, right?
If you
Legitimately.
want to do it well.
yeah,
service,
so we'd pay for the service to cut down on the staff time and the overtime and that, especially if you're dealing with an 8-day window. So that might be the only viable way to actually get that kind of work done with those constraints.
And again, back to the theme of making it easier and more accessible to be part of the budget process, that certainly helps that.
Yes,
And you can do that, instead of going to Stop and Shop and
waiting.
trying to get signatures, which probably all of us have done sometime or another. They sign it, address, and then you got to go check it. I'm just
Well,
checking
that's done
driver's
by the board of
licenses while they're
canvassers.
doing that.
Yeah, you can't.
Because you have to be a registered voter to,
Oh, see,
participate.
that's another thing, because anyone could go online and do it, but
Oh, yeah.
are they really, how do they prove their residency?
Verify yourself and then it has to be
Driver.
checked against the,
I mean, hello, with COVID, you had to, like New York State required you to upload your proof of vaccination
Right.
card. You could require them to upload their driver's license with a current address. Just as if it's just as legit as if you're handing.
showing it
them.
to someone is like,
They have to be an elector. They have to be registered to vote.
well, you first
Well,
verify
right,
who they are and then you can check it
Well,
against.
well, that's what, when you
voter
have
list, yeah.
people that'll sign any petition, if they're not registered to vote, why are they signing it? And 2,
Thank you, Ann.
Unfortunately, they
you
do, though, that's the.
Well, then the petition fails, right? Because they got 205 signatures, but 10 of them were thrown out because they weren't voters.
Correct.
Right,
The
then it's a,
petition
it doesn't, yeah.
Right.
It fails.
Even now, I know in Coventry, if you want to change your party affiliation, I just did this with my daughter, there's a way to verify through Coventry's website. So I think the basis of the technology is already there. It's just a matter of repurposing probably what's already there
Application.
for the application.
Just verification.
Yeah.
Lot to ponder.
But the other side of that is that you're looking at something to modify an existing approved budget. Okay, how simple do you want to make that process? I mean, don't you want to have people have to be passionate enough about it to go out and collect 200 signatures?
That's a good point.
Very good point. Mhm.
Yeah.
I mean,
On the
Well-
other hand, if you made it super easy and you got that petition in, the voters still have the choice of, do you want the tried and true professionally developed budget, or do you want this alternative, which we don't know the motives or the reasons? I mean,
The
But
guy-
for me,
Granted, I would
honestly, I'll take either budget because it's better than no budget, right?
Right,
Mhm.
exactly.
I think the
the-
questions would be it'd basically be, it would, based on what South Kingston does, it's like town municipal budget, school budget,
Mhm.
increase by amount or decrease by amount. That's it. It's not, I want to add $200,000 to the town budget to do, like, you can't go, it's we're adding money and then it's on them if it's approved, or cut money and then it's on them to balance the budget, whichever way.
What municipality was it that has only the 20 signatures? Is that North Kingstown?
That was the earlier process. In the two public hearings in South Kingstown, you can petition with 20 signatures. Those line item level ones go to town council and they can take them or leave them, basically.
Before adoption.
Yeah.
So maybe that's the solution, is coming up with a smaller number, but there's still live wet paper signatures. So it's less that the Board of Canvassers has to verify with a smaller amount, but it's still legwork that someone would have to do. I mean, anyone who's run for office, even to get 50 signatures for your nomination papers can be a challenge, unless if you know a lot of people. So, I mean, I don't know, just food for thought.
Hybrid process, both. Something like that.
If you don't mind, I'm sure we'll be discussing this more. If you don't mind, if we can go back to old business for a second. We authorized Ben to do the survey. I think that there was some exchange about what the question should be.
Mhm.
I got responses from everybody and everyone had the same consensus about the two questions that should be asked.
So we already authorized you and we voted to do it, I think. And I don't want to do anything without Scott being here.
I was gonna ask, rather than call for a vote or anything, since it's not explicitly listed, but does anyone object to me is doing the survey, say tomorrow?
No,
No one objects?
No.
I just, because that's the
we
understanding.
need that information.
That would be
so.
helpful information. That way we don't have to agenda.
Sarah, you look skeptical there. Please tell me.
Well, I'm absolutely don't.
Okay.
I just don't
No.
want to publicly say
I mean, we're framing this as kind of a quick
because
poll.
it's not on our.
I know the only other comment I had was, I think the question was 2 or 4 years. But my sense was a lot of people were going to go, what is it now? They're not going to know.
They're not going to know.
Right.
Could we mention that in the question? That was I think everything else we were consistent. I think it was
It's
the only.
kind of like only information gathering. so
Oh, no, I
it's-
think it's a great, I 110% support it, and I agree with all you guys.
Well,
Okay.
even if they
Off
don't
the
know what it
record.
is now, it's even a more candid question, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's another way to look at it too. Yeah. What do you think?
I actually almost think it's a less biased question if they don't know what it currently is.
You can go with
Yeah.
that. Okay.
That's actually a good thing.
All right, so
Yeah, that's a good point.
as the chairman, I'm gonna say go for it. How's that sound?
I'm ready,
Okay.
Yeah, we'll-
if I can remember by tomorrow morning.
Whatever you do is gonna be great then.
Well, but we need input. So
Right, we do.
We're making decisions that are gonna affect how we govern ourselves, and the more input, the better.
I 100%
You know, I
agree.
got that alert on the gas leak, which was helpful because I didn't go near that place. I know I got text and I know I got a call. So I haven't given you my email. I need to do that. Can that be done online to add my email?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, good. Make sure I do that.
So let's
You
go
pick-
to,
A modality offline. I got a text, email, 2 phone calls.
So the.
the more the merrier is the way it should
You
be.
can do it for the town, but the
redundancy
town
is
did
good.
not generate that code red message. I think that was National Grid.
Oh,
Well, the redundancy can be good. You never know. You may only have access to
Well, the
one.
police sent one out
On
too.
something like that, I want to
Was
But
get
the
it.
police
both
that sent it
ways.
out?
I really
The
don't care about
police
the
sent
sex
out
offenders.
one for the gas.
leak.
Yeah, over the telephone. That's the way I got it.
Okay, okay.
I even got it as a text. I think.
I didn't get that. See,
I got phone calls. I didn't get any texts and
I hear you.
got one email.
Just glad we have it. It's helpful.
Okay, so let's move along into new business, section 9, Office of Personnel and Records, which Ben brought up, and said that office doesn't exist. There's no one
Or
to
it's
run
not
it.
called that anymore.
Right, so
Some of this.
we, the way it reads, it would be the town clerk who is the director of records. And the human resources director is the director of personnel. And those are two separate positions. Whereas this is kind of listing it as one department.
I'm sorry, which, can you just,
Section 9.
Section
9,
9,
thank you.
Article
I'm
9.
It says duties.
Yeah, so that's just not how the town is structured. The human, well, both human resources director and town clerk. Well, the town clerk is its own department. The human resources manager reports to the town manager and is part of the administrative department. So just that it doesn't line up.
So
The Board of Canvassers in 902, the Board of Canvassers is a separate legal kind of body
Right.
under state statute.
Yeah, it's
I-
weird that
I-
would be there.
I had we'll say it was a little bit of a complaint and disagreement about workloads, assignments and duties and who had the authority to assign work. And the Board of Canvassers objected to the way it happened and pointed out the state statute. So there are some functional incongruities that don't make any sense, like how the clerk of the Board of Canvassers is also a member of the union when the union contract is with the town council and she doesn't report to the town council, she reports to the Board of Canvassers. So I argue that she's not in the union, but if it's a club she wants to join, they'll be happy to take her money. But these are just inconsistencies. Doesn't functionally change anything.
I didn't print the entire new one. I just, all I did was bring my 1972 with me.
Would you like to look at mine, Scott? I'm happy to share.
you know, these and other things I think we're gonna find. Because listen, to Ann, this could be a good thing, we could bundle, you know, there's kind of, he's called them inconsistencies or something.
Technical corrections.
Right,
or-
maybe that could be
Something
a
really
bundle
don't- yeah.
of things and keep them separated.
You
There's
good?
gonna be a bunch of them. I have, you know. I gotta get corrected sometime.
I thought I did my homework on it, so I just wasn't sure. Make sure that. Got it right in there. So. In 1972, 901 said director. There shall be a Department of Records and Personnel, the head of which shall be designated as the Director of Records and Personnel, and shall be either the manager or someone appointed by him. This is 1970.
That's what it
That's
still
pretty much
says
what it
now.
still
That's
says.
what it still
No,
says, yeah.
no,
So
what
I
they
guess
did is
I
the
can
very
be-
last word, they changed him to manager.
Mm.
So you are,
I guess I am the director of records.
you are the
and
director,
personnel.
you are the director.
That's a different way of saying it. I never.
So you do have the authority over,
The clerk and. the
everything
HR.
following.
Anyway, okay, well,
um,
that's not
I
inconsistent.
hope I didn't, you know, make things hard for you, but these
No,
are,
the only thing that doesn't fit in there is the Board of Canvassers and registration, because I do not have any.
well, the Board of
authority.
Canvassers answers to the state too, so.
But
They,
they're
they,
appointed by the council.
They're appointed by the town council.
right, but
But
they,
the
they're
council has
answerable to
no
the state. That's,
authority.
you know, when we talk about state.
Can the
local,
council
this, that.
dismiss them?
No,
Does the state pay
They
us?
can?
No, the state does not.
no, that,
Is it because that's a union position that you're not?
no,
Because
no,
you
no,
mentioned
that
that
has
earlier,
nothing to
that-
do with anything. But the statute, the town council can appropriate funds to the Board of Canvassers, but after that, they cannot meddle in their affairs or operations.
Because they're in charge of elections, right?
Yeah. It's the Board of Canvassers is intended to be an independent body so that it cannot be susceptible to the politics, because they have
Right,
to
right.
run the elections
And make sure they're
completely
fair.
legit. But if the Board of Canvassers hires a bad employee that wrecks things, there's nothing I or the council can do anything about it. It would be up to the board of canvassers themselves to discipline their rogue employees or be subject to the state. So that's kind of a worst case scenario, but it illustrates the point that they're not under the aegis of the town council.
So I got this
I
straight.
think you guys are the only, or we are the only towns that's that way then.
What are they doing this for?
My board of canvassers is appointed by the
So-
council as well. But I, as the town clerk, I'm also the canvassing clerk.
Oh,
So I have a staff member
So
that
you would
does.
have dual role, dual assignment, and one of your dual roles puts you under the authority of the manager and the council.
I'm completely at the mercy of the council. The manager,
Oh, no, okay,
right, yeah, I'm completely.
you're direct to the council.
So as I look at it again, you are in charge of the board of canvassers and not the employee that works in the canvassers office. Is that what I'm reading?
Well, it says I'm over the board of canvassers and registration, but
But state law
state
says
law
you
says
don't
I'm
can't
not.
be.
I can't be.
Right, that's, yeah.
So, and then going on to the next 4 words in that paragraph is and of the personnel board, which we no longer have, correct?
Well, there isn't one. Yeah, there is not.
That
one
was eliminated.
constituted.
That was eliminated a few
It's
years
still
back.
in the, there's a personnel ordinance that refers to it too. So both our ordinance and charter reference something that's no longer.
And the board of canvassers is appointed by the town council. Correct?
Yes.
They are, yep, I'm reading about that part.
But
right
they
now.
fall under your jurisdiction or not? Under your jurisdiction? Well,
So,
they're a volunteer board. That's
They're-
the board.
yeah, they're a
They're
volunteer
not a
board of
working
3.
board, right?
Huh?
They're not a working board, right? Some
Only-
towns also employ their.
Well, none of them are employees, no. So they're all volunteers, but they all are very hands-on part of every election.
But they're not paid for any of their duties beyond like one stipend or
Right,
anything like that, right?
Right.
Some towns will pay like their board of canvassers to come in and process voter registrations or come in and do nomination papers or
Right.
whatever. So I didn't know how you guys have that set up.
So I'll dig into that a little bit more. I just thought that the only thing that ever changed since 1972 was that one word, being manager. So you are the director according to the
All
charter,
right.
and it's not up to me to tell you how to do it. It's up to you to do it.
I don't know.
Because
He
you're
could
the
appoint
director.
you to do it.
Well,
It says someone appointed by the manager. So
well, I just, the interest that I got was that
Ask the buck.
there was only one change to it since 1972.
Yeah.
Right.
If it was inconsistent with state law, that probably would have been figured out in 1973 when they put the first charter together. So I'll ask some questions and see if I can figure out if what we're doing is by the book or not.
So would you like to see that change? Would it be like what part of it?
Well, I just
specifically?
removed the reference to the board of canvassers and registration.
But not the personnel board, because we don't have a personnel
Well,
board.
and
anymore.
that too, to take out both. I think it's really impractical to have the town manager have any authority over any council appointed board or commission. It's not the town managers to supervise what's otherwise a political process. The town manager is really supposed to be your chief administrator.
Mhm.
He's gonna apply. And to the extent that the manager or designee can provide staff support to any board, they're there in a support role, not a supervisory role.
Okay. Like I said, the only thing that got my attention was That language hasn't changed since 1972, so thanks for bringing it to our attention. And then you brought up
State law that changed.
section 1023, which was the $10,000 dollar amount for bidding purchases and contracts. And I printed the charter language and I printed the state language. So your explanation was that the furnace, I guess, went in the old police station and it's gonna cost $12,000 and you have no way of paying for it.
Well,
As an example, I should.
as an
say.
emergency repair, you can't just go fix it because you have the bidding requirement. Now, that's technically not true. We can declare an emergency and fix emergencies, but even if what we're really aiming at is not bringing every little repair before the town council for every decision. If it's routine in nature and under a certain dollar threshold, then it should be within the purview of the manager to just take care of it administratively. In fact, that's kind of a similar thing. The council had a quick meeting tonight to approve
Parading.
for the parade.
Parade.
Well, it wasn't the parade, but it was for an establishment on the parade route to extend their service area out into the parking lot to have outdoor service. And, do they really need to approve every single one of those? In that case, state law requires it because it's service of alcohol. But, I would think that any of the transient food truck licenses, that's like a headache all over the state. And why can't we just approve that administratively? Why do we have to have a hearing and a vote on every single day that they want to be in town? So
Oh, so I dug a little deeper, being the way I am. And if you went to 4555.9 is small purchases, that's probably where this belongs, and small purchases also say $10,000 as a maximum. So you're restricted by state law, not by the charter. If we get a hold of our legislators and say, hey, you want to go out and put something in for the cities and towns that have emergency powers to fix things. Picture this happening if they were still in there and they still have to operate. It has to be fixed. Where does it come from? So I don't know where to go with it. Any other
Well,
suggestions other than
the state bidding, the state threshold for bidding has been increased to 19,000 or some. So now the state law is actually more lenient or liberal than our charter. And I think that goes back to Jim's comment last week. Do we really want to have hard numbers in the charter when we can benchmark it against state procurement rules or?
did
Just
some
reference
research on
the state.
that too. I just gotta find the paper. Probably the one I left on my desk in my office, and that has to do with the Boston Consumer Price Index or something that's written into the law.
That's probably how they adjust it from
So
time to
So
time.
if we never adjusted it, you don't have to do it through the charter. You could add that language from the cost of inflation and this consumer price index thing.
That's
Oh,
actually.
man,
a question I'd love to
and I
ask.
had it too, and I'm like, oh, don't forget this guy.
But when you put a hard number on it in the charter, then you have to.
You're stuck.
You have to abide by
Yeah,
the
you're
charter.
stuck with it.
So maybe changing it to, instead of $10,000 to an amount that equals the cost of inflation. That type of thing. So I didn't see a hard number, like you said, 19,000.
Well, it could be that's what it is now, based on their calculation.
Well, I found that part of it, I think, in the Secretary of State's website. Because through municipal spending, I think it was. So
I think just one of us needs to chase this, that's where the state law verbiage is, and we can just.
Copy it.
Then
Well,
just reference
we
it.
can
Yeah.
ask our legislators to have a change just for this community. And
it
if it passes, it
possible
passes.
to strike that purchasing part from the charter and address it in the code of ordinances? Is that a possibility?
Mhm.
Because I don't know if every town has a purchasing policy in their charter. I think it might appoint someone like the town manager or the finance director as a purchasing agent, but not necessarily put the actual purchasing, like the bidding, and everything else. That might be addressed under ordinance, which could be changed by
This language is
council.
from nineteen
And even with
ninety-two.
ordinances, we try not to put hard numbers in the ordinance, like our fee schedule, so that we can change our fee by resolution every
Resolution, you
year.
have the flexibility,
And you have
yeah,
flexibility.
yeah, that might be something that we think of, I mean, again.
Change,
it would
yeah,
have to be
change
a
it
legal
from the
question.
charter to a resolution. You can change that year to year, right?
Yeah, so,
Just-
so your recommendation would be a proposal to remove, delete, eliminate from the charter this provision as it is addressed in ordinance.
Yeah,
Right, just to
That,
give you
this
guys-
should be ordinance rather than.
then charter.
Good idea.
just a thought.
Great idea.
That has to be written
I
to
didn't know
control
that.
spending too, right?
Right, so basically it would say almost the same exact thing in the ordinance, but it's easier to change an ordinance than it is to change a charter, so. I mean, where you need voter approval to change the charter for the ordinances, it's only the council, so if inflation goes through the roof and he needs to up his minimum purchase to 25,000, he's not waiting 5 years for the charter review committee to get together and hoping that the voters pass it. The council is able to step in and say, this threshold doesn't meet our needs anymore, we need to increase it to that.
You get to write that question to the town
Oh,
council.
gosh.
See, because you explain it so well. So,
Thank you.
everything in Rhode Island is restricted to state law.
Yeah,
And, we've been under home rule now for 50 years.
right.
This is our 50th year. There were 15 changes since 1972. You'll see it all in there. So I guess we need to adjust,
Just a thought to try to make it a little bit easier, but still have checks and balances.
but make it palatable to the people that are going to be voting yes or no on the question,
Right.
you know.
That's always a challenge.
But like Ben said, it was going to be $12,000 to replace that furnace. Without that furnace or keeping that building sellable, we don't want it to just turn into, like something that the vines are growing over and nobody's going to pay attention to
Right.
anymore. It's a beautiful building.
Yes, it
So-
is.
Yep.
Just out of curiosity, does this allow, like, if there's a state bid, like it was on the master, what was it called, the master
Yeah, the
bid
master
list?
purchasing agreement.
Yeah, would you be able to use one of those vendors without having to go out to bid? Or-
Yeah, you can always piggyback off of an existing contractor bid,
There is a bill in right now from
but this isn't
George
about,
Nardone that has to do with that.
so this would
The
preclude
registry.
you from doing the master
Right.
bid list.
I know.
So you have to
it-
do
it
something
actually-
specific for what you need.
Because I have to follow the
would.
charter.
Well, I really think that I personally don't think it's appropriate to have that in the charter. I think it should be an ordinance. But
But you're going to say something, Ted.
No,
You gave me that look.
It's funny, I immediately went to a section on ordinances, because that's in the charter. Repealing ordinances, continuing ordinances.
And that's important
So
to
we need
have
to be
in there, to
consistent
have a
too.
process.
Yeah.
I'm not, for part of my ignorance, I'm not exactly 100% sure on Coventry's ordinance, but most places you have a first and second readings, public hearings involving the public, they come and weigh in on it, and then it's, so many days it
Does
passes.
the ordinance have a purchasing policy? The,
Town
that's
meeting.
not,
I would assume it probably does, because usually they're a lot more specific than what's.
Well, let me, I'll say no, because we don't actually have any formal financial policies in our whole finance department, not for a lot of things.
so
which
you
is-
can't find anything in the code of ordinances that gives the council the power to spend above any.
Well, the council has plenary power to spend in the charter.
Right.
So this section is only talking about, the expenditure for professional services and such exceptions as the town council may prescribe. This is really delegating authority to staff to make expenditures. And it's a guideline. I'd have to look through the ordinances. I don't see any headings in the code of ordinances that. Oh, purchasing and bids. There we go. Yeah, we have a whole section, chapter 56 on purchasing. So we already have it covered in both the charter and the ordinance.
But is there a dollar value that's part of the ordinance that we're in violation of when it comes to the,
Oh, yeah, the anything in excess of $5,000.
So the threshold's even lower.
Yeah.
well, before 1972, all the home rule charters that were out there was 5,000. And
Yeah.
Yeah, before
1992
1972.
was, I
Buy a
think,
car
the year
for-
I
that
was
they
gonna
brought it
say.
up. I think 92 was the year they brought it up to 10,000 and $10,000 in 1992, and today are two whole different
Mhm.
stories.
So no, what you're saying is the ordinance related to purchasing rules is $5,000.
Yeah, that's what it says.
And what is that ordinance number, by the way?
Chapter 56, section 10, 56-10, competitive bidding.
Well, it's very interesting because the repeal of ordinance states all town ordinances and resolutions that are in conflict with the charter are null and void. So
So you don't have
I have
that's
relief
so it
from
is
that.
$10,000.
There you
You go with this.
So how do you sell that, of striking that from the
Well,
charter?
for things to make-
And because when you tell people we want to
Okay.
take this out of the charter, they're probably gonna freak out.
They're gonna be like, oh, so now you can just
You
spend
That's
just
whatever
why
want
you
to
want.
spend, you want a blank
Well,
check. So
That's why
how
I
do you-
said that you would be the one to explain
Thanks,
it
Scott.
to everybody.
Thanks.
So
Yeah,
I think there's a bigger narrative here. One of the tools you're gonna have coming out in a couple of weeks is the completion of a performance audit of the town and school, all functions. And in that performance audit, there are, like, I just got the draft today, there are many recommendations for automating, using technology to do work order management, task management. They couldn't even evaluate the staffing and efficiency in the public works department because there's no records to evaluate. There's nothing there. And so with all of these recommendations, the focus is the town has not positioned itself to run efficiently. And the charter, to the extent that the charter has outdated provisions that impedes efficient functioning of government. That's why you're making these changes, and that you have a number of changes for both housekeeping and efficiency reasons. And while you're making these recommendations, the totality, you're also trying to make participation in government more accessible, easier,
Right.
and everything else. So it's not just one or the other. And that's kind of going back to what you talked about in previous meetings is you like to have a recommendation that you do it all. That this is a package, not just
Right.
a la carte.
Every line item.
And that in the context, if you start taking things out a la carte, you're gonna be maybe at cross purposes from some of the other intended provisions. But that just depends on what your recommendations develop into.
Yeah, we could really use some suggestions on that, I think, of things to group together so we can, as a whole. I mean, again, like the big ticket items such as changing term limits or going from partisan to nonpartisan election, or vice versa, sorry, from nonpartisan to partisan elections, those might be separate standing questions, but I think like a basic, we want to clean up the charter and make it in line with state law.
Or just one question that says changes to make town more efficient. I don't know. I'm just.
We would
I'm
need some
putting-
legalese for that.
I know.
We've
That's why
already
I'm not-
we
that's
already
why
got
I'm
a
not a
couple of
lawyer.
things that have already told us that we're not in compliance with the
Yeah.
law, so
Yeah.
it's.
I think we really need someone to evaluate this document as a whole that knows those laws. I mean,
So I've got a
And
meeting
there's a
set
reason,
up
and
to,
you get to take an extra one of those home, because we're interviewing this week. So
Oh,
that
good.
is for your suggested person, and then the other person is gonna have the same thing. So,
fantastic.
I
don't care who it is, but I think we do need someone to come in at
Yes.
this
Yeah.
point and give us some guidance.
Scott, you just raised a question, a thought for me. If something in the charter is it's technically illegal, it contradicts state law, and we put a question to bring it aligned with state law, and it's voted down. Like, what happens then? Like, if
It
it's,
stays in the charter, I guess. You know,
You go to court, Mike. So,
really,
It's in
Here's
power
my
until
answer
it's
to that.
it's not.
if someone put something in the charter to force the question in the courts.
okay,
That was the reason that I said, this does not belong here, because all it is it's begging to go to court. And I hate saying it, but lawyers are lawyers, and they would love to go to court because they get their hours.
We have a long tradition of that going back to 1789.
Oh, yeah.
And 3/5
So,
compromise.
Could we add a new section to the charter that just says state
Some
law
brain
supersedes
cells.
this charter?
well, it does anyways. So-
Okay.
But here's the thing, we have the thing with the teacher's contract. It's easy to point out and try to draw our own, our not legal opinions that this section is in violation of the state law. But right now it's on the books, we're operating by it until it goes to court and it's ruled that it's illegal. That's the thing. So if we,
So it's made political. It's made to say that, we don't care if it's against the law. We're gonna keep it there anyway. So.
well, I'm just.
So that begs the
ultimately-
question is, do you want to keep spending money on things that are put there for you to spend money? Or do you want to eliminate them and move on? So,
I like the idea, because if it's like, we have this on here, the state says this, that we can't have something that goes against the state law because of their supremacy clause, so we're just trying to get rid of it. But again, they vote no, it's still on our books, and we still gotta follow it until, if you want to challenge it and get it in front of a judge and get them to rule on
depends on
it.
the writing.
Yeah, it
Well,
depends.
that's the thing.
It
Well-
depends on the writing. That's right.
Yeah.
If you've put, this puts the city at risk.
Oh, I agree,
You-
I
you-
agree with you.
So there are a lot of other things that put the
Something
town
like
at
that.
risk where the voters still vote it down, like voting down budgets in a certain fire district where
True.
that's gonna hurt them ultimately. And that's their choice. And government of the people, by the people, for the people doesn't always run ideally. So I think if it gets voted down, it gets voted down with status quo.
Yeah,
Is that
just
tonight?
Hmm?
Is that tonight?
That was the other night. It was last night or Monday night.
No, they pushed the budget back to May.
Did they?
So they did not have a
Hmm.
vote.
No, the budget vote is in May in that district.
When did they change that?
At a meeting no one knew about.
Oh, it's unbelievable what's
As
been
usual.
going on
That
there.
sounds like,
It's unbelievable what's been going on there.
I think that's something that's going to be addressed by this committee. So, in any event, is there any more input on? No?
You know,
So you're the director of personnel
I am, and records.
and records.
You appoint someone?
Does he get another hat?
Want a hat or do you want a card?
Or maybe another sign and put
Yeah.
it on the town manager?
I can build a hat collection.
I would say that in 72, they put it all together, they probably will weigh in the fact of having a mayor and having a manager. In 1972, there were only about 16,000 people.
I was just
that
gonna say
lived
the
in this town.
population was a third of what it is now, right?
So,
The showboat was still a viable landmark.
And you could buy a car for $5,000.
72, 3,000.
Yeah,
So-
I was gonna say, my grandparents bought their house in Block Island for.
you
so
should
for
be
the
vacant.
good of the committee,
No, I
please,
had-
please delve into the
72,
information in
Chevy
front of you, you're gonna like it.
Okay, all right.
7,300 bucks. I mean, 3,300.
Okay, all right.
And you'll see names you recognize or don't recognize, but this town has been a political town for years, and I don't see all that going away too soon. But our job is to get people engaged and get them part of, having them be a part of the solution instead of continuing the problem that we have. And the problem is we can't get people to invest in the community and keep the community going. So if we can change things to make it get better, we'll do so. And with that, I'll entertain a motion to
Call
adjourn.
for public
Public
comment.
comment.
Oh, excuse me. Is there any public comment? Because we're public. I see one. Is that a hand?
I
That's
think
the
it's a
mouse.
Okay,
I have a public comment.
I thought it was a hand for a
I
second.
thought it was last week,
So-
remember?
I have a public comment.
Go for it.
Circling back to a few meetings ago, I think the 16th. There was some concern, it may have been Scott, who said there may have been some concern with like appointing someone before going back to like the special elections for vacated seats. There was some concern if it was like very early in their term, if it would become biased or something like it. There was some concern like that, like whether there should be a special election or do an appointment until the next one.
Yes. Yep.
So my only thought was if we wanted to talk about it next time or whatever is,
I'll put it on the agenda.
if we wanted
Actually,
to word it,
It was on
be-
tonight's agenda.
because we don't know what's gonna happen with like the terms of the council, what if we worded it something, whereas if a vacancy occurs within the first quarter of their term, there would be a special election.
That was, Ted, you had brought that up.
I know we kicked around a couple ideas. The thought that I had was if the vacancy occurs early enough, there
Yeah.
should still be a special election,
Right,
but I'll also allow for interim appointments. So
right.
let's take the school committee district one, let's just back it up a year. Let's say that was year one, we're still gonna have a special election, but the person resigns in December. The earliest we can have the election is May. We'll still have it, but we can appoint for that
Yeah,
5-month
okay,
period.
yeah.
So if it's, and then if it's like this year where we're already having an election coming up in November,
Yeah.
now we're closer to an election, we can go that way. So kind of like, we want to we don't want 3-year appointments if it's school
Right,
committee or
right,
all those
right,
things,
yeah.
or 2 full years. But it was 2 things. Number one, limit the special elections to when therefore a significant time period,
Yeah.
but also allow for interim appointments, even if you're having a special election, so you don't have that district without coverage for 4 or 5 months,
All right,
just
I
to
got it.
allow for a special
And
election.
that would be for both school committee and council.
That would be,
regardless.
that would be my, yes,
That
I
should
would,
be
yeah.
regardless. of-
It should be, because that's
I
the-
would
like-
say so say the people want to go back to 2-year terms for council. If someone gets elected and dies 2 days later, it's an issue.
Yeah.
That would be something that works where the remainder of the council can appoint someone to fill that seat until
The special election.
the special election, which
So
is
take,
done by
so
law.
take town council, Councilwoman Lima's seat that she won. Councilman Cody resigned like 1 month after the general election, so there were almost 2 full years left of that term.
Right.
You would still have the special election, which was in May, but you could appoint someone from November to May or December to May. If it's 1 year later and you have an election coming up, then you can appoint to, like, we figure out what we want to
Yeah,
have
yeah,
as the
yeah.
cutoff date. I just keep saying
Yeah,
1 year because that's
yeah,
in the
okay.
middle, but, and also we still have on the school committee side because they're gonna be 4-year terms.
Right, well,
You
they're
know,
always
they
gonna-
have-
Do we want to have can we have a special election coincide with a general election that's not their seat?
Right.
That was the
Until
other thing that
next
we had.
regular
Right.
election.
Regular
We
election,
were gonna
not
say,
their
not
election.
That's what
Right.
happened when I was on the school committee. I took Nancy Springelmeyer's spot because
When
she
she
moved.
moved,
She had 3.5 years left on it. I was appointed until the next
and then you had a 2-year
Election.
term.
for 2 years, then it was an election for 2 more years till the end of that term, and then it became a
Right.
4-year term.
And that makes
Right.
sense.
That makes sense.
That's
But
also
it-
what the state law says.
But if it was more, it was just short of a year.
Right.
If it was
Like if it
more
was-
than a year, then it was a general election.
Special.
Yeah, special
There's
election.
no, for the school committee, there's no provision in state law for requiring a special election.
That's done in the charter.
That's ours,
Mhm.
so, yeah.
Okay.
So we could, just
See, all
recommend
these little
eliminate
things keep
that.
cropping up and we try to make it, make it easy for, for representation first off. And make it more cost effective for the taxpayer.
Right,
Yep.
so for the cost of putting a special election that's not necessary by state law, I would adopt the state law verbatim for the charter.
And
ourselves.
even the appointment of someone, I mean, if someone has to, if the council takes in applications, let's say for the vacant school committee seat, and then they almost have like an interview process, the public would be able to weigh in on all those applications, right? Would they not?
They do that.
So there's almost like they would have a chance to, you
They
know,
could. They don't do the interview process for these boards and commissions in public. They do all of those
but they could choose to.
in closed session, but they could choose to do it on open. That's true.
They could choose to. So just a thought, it doesn't take the public completely out of the appointment.
Mhm.
They would still have a say,
Anyway, we're a room full of problem solvers.
always. Volunteer applications for everybody. It's always
Anything
nice
else
to-
on the public comment?
Just one comment. A lot of good ideas. People are thinking about what we need to do. We're talking about the timeline of the budget. We have a timeline to get this done too. I'm a little concerned. We're gonna be rolling into April before you know it.
Mhm.
And I'm just wondering, maybe next week we talk about maybe assigning folks and saying, you've got this, take a crack at it.
Okay.
You know, things like that. So we can start putting things on paper.
What I would like to
I feel like we're
do-
getting there.
What I would like to do is, I'm sure there are things that people are gonna be a little passionate about.
Sure.
And rather than myself being the only person up there making a presentation to the council, I think if you have an issue that's important to you, I think that we should stand there together and you should show the council that it's not a single person that's trying to get this done. It is a committee that's trying to get this done.
Mhm.
I think it'll be more welcomed. I think the public would like that. Instead of, and what it would do would just take politics out of it right off the bat. You know, here are the things that we feel strongly about and everybody give a presentation. And maybe even if we need to have the legal counsel standing up with us or you or whoever doing the presentation, we'll do that. Like I said, we want to get the public's trust back and we want to move forward.
So there's been half a dozen ideas discussed, and I think there's a degree of consensus, even though we haven't really drilled down to the final wording and language. Perhaps that could be the goal of the agenda next week, and I don't know who would prepare each of the items, but at next week's meeting to say, okay, here's our progress report to the council of here's 6 items that we're feeling good about. And I can put that, and maybe I can take them from the minutes, but it'd be nice. if
Bob's,
You were all kind of in consensus of that. Okay, this one's ready, that one's not ready, whatever.
Bob's metric that he put together. When we want to send that, do we want to send it as a group or do you want to have each person put their pros and cons on it and send it to them? If you catch what I'm saying, instead of just we as a group like it because here are the pros, here are the cons, or would you rather put your own pros and your own cons on it? So it gives them, it kind of opens the council's mind a little bit more and has a different, it just gives it a little bit more wide vision, so to speak, if you know what I mean. It's like, you know, I feel strongly about it for this reason. You may feel strongly about it for that reason. You catch what I'm saying? I don't know if
I
that's.
think we should make one, but
One.
include
Just one?
every,
All right.
Yeah.
you know, all the ideas on it, but just like, here's one proposal and here are the reasons.
Okay.
For.
Yeah, I think this group has done a really good job at getting consensus and letting everyone be heard. And while there may be disagreements on certain points, that really hasn't prevented any of the other points from being made. So I think even then you could still list all the pros and cons, and you might disagree with some of them, but to the extent that they exist, we can report them.
Okay.
Because I'm thinking even next week, I mean, just to keep it simple, we started with that Excel spreadsheet. A lot of things we talked about are list of things which were predominantly town council members' issues. Let's just say there's 7 of them that we have now. What are the 7, you know, or anything else we want to add?
Mhm.
Kind of vet that list next week, maybe. Then it's like, we could assign people, but everybody can contribute their pros and cons, but somebody's got to need to sign a document to everybody, but everybody can contribute to it.
Okay.
That
So we're gonna-
document that you
So
created.
do a draft of each one, everybody takes a.
Just having that
Topic,
list
right?
first. What are the 7 things we're
Yeah.
talking about with
Yep.
with references to the section of the charter.
So we're gonna make what you printed out had a few more pros and a few more cons that we could put in there. Is that what I'm understanding?
You can put as many pros and cons in there as necessary. You know, that was an arbitrary number
Okay,
that I put in
okay.
there.
Yes,
You
maybe-
certainly can have more than
So,
more or less. It's
so
gonna depend on
we'll
the
put
item.
that on the agenda for next week about sending it to them. You're gonna start that poll.
Yep.
Maybe by next week, we might get some data back.
Okay.
To see how the public feels about it. And if you have any friends out there that you want to ask how they feel about things, ask away. Because all we're trying to do is trying to make things work.
Because we've got those two issues. We've got a few things that are going to be just some verbiage. And then we've got like a budget process is going to be a process. That's going to be a big,
Mhm.
big deal to lay
The
that out.
budget, which is,
Yeah.
I'm
That's a
sure
lot, there's a
is,
lot of pieces to it.
Yes.
Yeah. Make it a little more
Like, you may
simplistic.
take
and-
lead, but we can contribute to
Oh,
it
yeah.
or something like that.
So we'll also
Yeah.
want to identify which ones are going to be the separate ones, such as the budget. And which
And
ones
which
are going
ones
to
we want to
be,
bundle.
which ones we want to bundle.
Right. The
such
bundling
as
idea is a
the
good idea.
Getting in compliance with state law.
You mean bundle as,
One question on the ballot.
okay, well,
Let me put it this way, if we have five,
you can't change one thing on the ballot in the charter mixed in with another. It has to be written individually because it's its own section in the charter. So you can't turn around and say, we want to change 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You can't.
So it
has to be-
would be more so in your, on the charter review website or charter changes website, we can have a form where we're gonna do the survey, where we could list, here are all the items that are grouped under or categorized under housekeeping and bringing into alignment with state statute and law. And if people do their research ahead of time, they'll know that questions, whatever, we could group them by questions like 6
So
through
we're gonna do a
10.
charter review website.
Mhm. It'll be a page on the town website.
Okay.
And then we can just
Oh,
say,
yeah.
Says the
here's
charter-
this group of
charter commission
questions.
isn't
All these
active.
are,
Under that section where the charter commission isn't active.
Yeah.
That section.
yeah.
That's good idea. That'll be good. Place to put it. But yeah, I mean, we'll have to look back because she mentioned that they did bundle some in a chart, question.
so you might be able
See how they
to,
did it.
you might be able, if you have the text that says we're changing this line, this line, this line, but vote yes or no, and you either, they all get approved or all get
Right.
not approved.
Yeah,
Well, you know,
we'll see what they did.
Check with,
I hear what you're
we can
saying.
check with our
Scott.
legal once we get,
Yes, yes. All I know is the last charter review,
well, they were very
the
strict.
council, yes, they were, and there's nothing wrong with that.
No.
They brought their recommendations to the council and they all failed. So they met again and then they finally came back and got 2 things passed. Again, I'm not sure if it was because it's what the sitting council wanted. Or if it was, that was the only thing that the council wanted. So, my philosophy is this, is we're being asked to make the town run better. Send the questions. There's no reason to not ask somebody whether they want something or not. It's, hey, is this what you want? Yes or no? And then further, you're starting a charter review website.
We'll make sure the page is active.
I was gonna say, hopefully I can find that one.
Are you gonna do that
Just-
tomorrow, right after you send out the
It was
questions?
meetings, I think.
Looking for an agenda on our website is, I know. what
Right
to look
after I
for.
solved the Johnson Pond issue and the police and the gasoline.
You know,
And the
if
potholes
you-
on my
The
street.
potholes on
If
your
you wait
streets.
long enough, the Johnson,
Wait, are you on official?
the Johnson Pond issue is gonna go away because the dam's gonna fall down.
I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. All in
Uh,
favor?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. We are adjourned.